Hello and welcome to all. Today's session we'll see what are the best practices for the test kit design. Okay, so if in case you're preparing for the senior position, then this is the usually the interview is asking the question, what are the best practices you are using while designing a test case? Okay, so today's session we'll see what are the best practices we can use it while developing or designing a new test case. Okay, so before we start, first we'll understand what is a test case design. Okay, so test case design, it is a process of identifying the test conditions, okay, defining the test data, expected result, and the execution steps. Okay, so required to verify that a software application behaves as expected. Okay, so now first we'll see the best practice like when we are designing a test case. Okay, so first we need to understand the requirement first. Okay, never start writing the test case immediately. Remember it. Okay, first understand the business requirement, functional requirement, acceptance criteria. Okay, uh, if in case it is mentioned user workflow, okay, then business rules. Okay, now here you can see here I give the one example. Okay, so requirement is like user should be able to withdraw money from an ATM. Okay, don't start writing like user enter the pin, select withdraw, enter amount and submit. Okay, so start thinking like if user enter the valid pin, okay, valid amount, the invalid pin, okay, valid amount, okay, then block the card, okay, if user is having insufficient balance, okay, if in case ATM cash is unavailable, okay, so we need to think that perspective as well. Okay, so first we need to understand the business requirement, functional requirements, acceptance criteria. If it is mentioned in story, then and then we need to start the test case. Then, as part of test kit design, we need to cover both positive and the negative scenarios. Okay, like positive scenarios means valid username and the valid password login successful. Whereas the negative scenarios, like if you consider the login functionality, user enter the invalid username, invalid password, both the invalid. Okay, or if user enter the blank username, blank password. Okay, then it should display the relevant error message on the screen. Okay. We also need to use the equivalence partition. Okay, so it is nothing but it's divide the input data into groups where the system is expected to behave similarly. For example, if we have one field, age field, and its requirement is it should accept the 18 to 16 age. Okay, instead of testing every number, it's not possible. So what we'll do, we'll partition into like below minimum, valid range, and the above. Okay, maximum. So three representative test case provide the meaningful coverage, and we'll cover the everything. The next, we need to use the test boundary values. Okay, so if you see many defects occurs at the boundaries. Okay, like if you consider the earlier example, if you mention 18 to 16, okay, then we need to verify with the 17 years, 18 years, 19 years, then 59 years, 60, 61 years. Okay, usually found lot of defects related to boundary values. Okay. Then we need to think about the data types as well. Okay, don't test only for the normal values. Okay, if it is a name field or the string, we need to check with the alphabetic characters, space, special characters, long input, empty input. We need to give the leading and trailing space. Okay, if you're checking for the numbers, okay, then we need to test with the positive numbers, negative numbers, zero, decimal numbers. Okay, so at least if it is not mentioned in the story or the epic, okay, so as a QA, okay, we need to inform the product, okay, it should display the relevant error message on the screen. Okay. Then next we need to understand the business rules. Okay, like here, customer receives the 10% discount if the order value is 5,000 or the more. Okay, so we'll not test only for the 5,000 and the 10% more. We need to test like 4,999, 5,000, 5,001. Okay, so this way we need to cover the all the test cases along with the business rule. Okay. Then we all while designing test case we also need to cover the decision table. Okay, for the complex rules. Like for example, here I give one example. Suppose an insurance application approves a loan only when customer is eligible, credit score is acceptable, income is sufficient. You can then here we can model a combination like eligibility, okay, then credit score, income and the expected. Okay, so now here you can see if eligibility is yes, good score, okay, credit score is good, then income is sufficient, then we'll approve the loan. Okay, if any parameter is not satisfied, okay, anything, either it's eligible or the credit score or the income, okay, we'll reject the loan. Okay. The next is a test state transition. Okay, so system behaves differently depending on the current state. Okay, now if you see here, like if a bank account is active, okay, and after that, if it is suspended, then we need to close it. Then we'll also test for the active to suspended. Okay, we'll also check it active to close. Okay, so this is called the state transition testing. Okay, because we are changing the state. Okay, then error handling. Okay, so basically error handling or error guessing. Okay, so this is the verify that the application works. Okay, and verify how it fails. Like for example, like payment fails because of the bank server is unavailable. Okay, then it should display the proper error message. Okay, or it should give the proper notification or it should log the proper details. Okay, so that is called the error handling, whereas error guessing. Okay, so basically error guessing, it's a experienced person. Okay, if we are the experienced QA, then we will guess the where the error will come. Okay, so we'll enter that, we'll execute that scenario, and we'll make sure that it is handling the correct way. So we are expecting either proper error message or it's logged into the data table or in log table. Okay. Then we also need to consider best practices in the integration points. Okay, like if you see here, okay, as a QA or as a full stack QA, our job is not only verify the UI things. Okay, we need to verify API level as well, database as well. Okay, so a test case should consider failure between these components. Okay, if there is any failure, we need to report it, and as an integration testing, we need to cover it. Okay, so next important best practice is test data. So never randomly choose the test data. Okay, we need to consider the test data, valid data, invalid data, boundary data, then maximum value data, minimum value data, duplicate data, blank data, special characters, okay, existing records. Okay, so it is nothing but the if user is already added the name and if user is again trying to enter the same name, then it should display the correct relevant error message on the screen. Okay. Then most important thing is the avoid duplicate test cases. Okay, so now if you see, so if we write the test case for login with the valid username and valid passwords, okay, or if you write the login with the valid credentials, okay, here if you see everything is same. Okay, so we need to avoid such kind of test cases, duplicate test cases. Okay. The next important test case should be independent. Your test case should not be depend on each others. Okay, here I gave the example. Like for test case 001 first, then execute test case 002. This is not a good practice. Okay, so what we'll do, each test case should have its own precondition, test data, steps, expected result. Okay, so definitely if your each test case is having all this combination, then it's improve the maintainability, parallel execution, automation is also easy, and debugging is also easy, and it is useful in regression testing as well. Okay, so we need to write a clear expected result. Don't write vague statement like login should work. Okay, so instead of that one, we will mention user is authenticated successfully and redirected to the dashboard. User's name and the account information should get displayed. So expected result should be observable and measurable. Okay. Okay, like as I mentioned earlier, precondition is required. Okay, like for example, here I gave the verify user can reset the password. So the precondition is like user account should exist, register email address is active, and user is on the login page. So without precondition, maybe the new tester he may not be know how to execute the test correctly. The next, test usability and validation. Okay, so functional testing is not enough. We need to verify the usability perspective as well. Like we need to verify the field labels, mandatory fields, error message, password masking, tab order, button state, accessibility. Okay, and the keyboard navigation. Okay, this is also part of our best practices. Okay. Now considering the security, okay, so as a senior QA, we need to aware of the security. Okay, and as part of our security testing, we need to cover the basic scenarios like XSS or SQL ingestion, okay, or the session timeout, account lockout. Okay, so this way we need to cover the security testing as well. Okay, so In best practice, we also need to consider the compatibility. Okay, so we need to consider compatibility with the browser operating system. Okay, so don't blindly create every combination. So we need to consider the as per our product, as per our requirement, as per our business. Okay, we need to consider the compatibility, either browser operating system. Okay. Okay. Then important thing when you design the test cases. Okay, so not all the test cases have the equal business value. Okay, we need to divide the test cases according to the priority wise. Okay, here I have mentioned P0 is high priority, so application cannot log in. Okay, or P1 we can say payment gets fail, or P3 it's a minor or UI alignment issue. Okay, if you return the test cases like that way, then we need to divide all the test cases P0 to P3. Okay, so when we are designing test case, okay, remember this formula. Okay, first we need to understand the requirement, then business rules, positive test case we need to cover, negative, boundary, data, re- we need to cover, then state transition we need to cover, integration test cases we need to cover, then security, usability, compatibility, and the risk-based testing is nothing but the priority testing. Okay, whatever the use case the user is doing, we need to consider that as well. Okay, if you follow this sequence, then I'm sure you are going to cover each and all the scenarios. Okay, and this is the techniques. Okay, we can see it. Okay, when you are designing the test case, okay, first equivalence partition, divide the input into classes, then boundary value analysis, test limit, decision table. We can also it if you have complex business rules, then state transitions. Okay, state dependent on the system. Okay, use case testing when we have end-to-end user workflow. Okay, then pairwise testing. Okay, combination of the heavy inputs like here I have already mentioned if we need to perform the verification on the multiple browsers along with the multiple operating system, then we need to consider the pairwise testing. Then error guessing, okay, it's experience-based testing. Then exploratory testing, okay, we need to discover the unexpected defects, and the risk-based testing. It's a prioritize critical functionality. Okay, so this way we can use the best practices while designing the test case in our day-to-day life, and we'll try to cover all the 100% of the coverage. Okay, if in case you have any questions, queries, please let me know. Thank you.